So this is the answer for the Science Foundation Double Award 2018 paper. So the first question, Kerry used a data logger to measure light intensity at 6 sites along a 120 metre transect through a wood as shown below. Describe how light intensity changes along a transect. So if we're describing, we are saying what you see. And as I can see that the light intensity decreases and then it increases. And that's the worth of 2 marks. Kerry thought that light intensity affected the number of plant species growing under the trees along a transect. She counted the number of plant species present at each site. The results are shown in the table. Complete a bar chart on the grid below by labelling the vertical axes, using a ruler to draw the bars in for the number of the plant species. So, labelling our axes, so on the side we have number of plant species, and then we have site on the bottom. And we're drawing our bars, making sure we have our space between them, and our space is the same size. State Kerry's hypothesis. Her hypothesis is that changes in light intensity affect the number of species. Do the results of the investigation support her hypothesis? Give a reason for your answer. It does, because as light decreases, the number of species also decreases, okay, which we can see here. And remember that at first light intensity decreased and then it increased again. So as it increased again, the number of species also then increased. Apart from light intensity, suggest one other environmental factor that might affect the number of plant species, so temperature. The photograph shows Irenaeus europaeus, I can't do the Latin. This has many common names such as hedgehog, urchin and furze pig. State the kingdom which the hedgehog belongs. It belongs to the animal kingdom. And give the genus name for the hedgehogs. We have the Latin name here, okay, and we need to just take the first one because it's the genus. Explain why scientists use a scientific name rather than common names. It's because it's universal and avoids confusion. They're the only 2 things you need to say. Do not go writing anything else. Complete the following sentences about sense organs using some of the words from the list below. So, sense organs respond to specific stimuli by sending information in the forms of impulses, which are carried to the central nervous system. State the name of the specialised nerve cells that carry the information to the central nervous system. They are neurons. Remember, there are 3 types. We have sensory, relay and motor. An organ that processes information received from the sense organs. We're looking at the spinal cord, or we could have said brain. Jed investigated the hearing of some Year 11 pupils and their teachers. He asked 12 pupils and 12 teachers to say if they could hear a buzzer when she sounded at each 5 distances away from the 2 groups. The same buzzer was pressed for each person. The results are shown in the table. So we've got distance 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Year 11 pupils, and then the teachers. Give one conclusion that Jed can make from the investigation. One is that there's no change in hearing up to 15 metres. So at 15 metres, the Year 11 pupils and the teachers could hear it at the exact same, the same number of pupils could hear the buzzer. State one way in which Jed's investigation is a fair test. He had the same distance, the same number of people, and also we could put, if I highlight it, that the same buzzer was pressed for each person. What else could Jed have done to make sure the investigation was a fair test? We could have used the same gender, so have all boys or girls. Jed thought that increasing the same sample size would improve his confidence in his conclusion. Describe how Jed would increase sample size in this investigation. Explain why it would improve the confidence. So, how we could increase sample size, we would add more people into each group, so more Year 11 pupils and more teachers. And it would improve the confidence because we would spot any different anomalies by having a larger sample size. Complete the following sentences about genes. Genes are found in the nucleus on a cell on paired structures called chromosomes. Remember, we have 46 in the human body. Genes are sections of long molecules called DNA. Alan crossed 2 pea plants. One parent had purple flowers, one parent had white flowers. All the offspring had purple flowers. that's important. Colour, flower colour in pea plants is controlled by one gene. The gene has two alleles, a big D and a little d. Underline the correct answer to complete the following sentences. So the genotype is the set of alleles the organism has, okay, of parent one. So parent one had purple flowers and all the offspring had purple flowers. So then we know that the parent is homozygous dominant because it's the dominant characteristic and all the offspring had it. The genotype for parent two, they will have white flowers, so white is recessive, so they have to be little d, little d. And the phenotype of the offspring, they would be heterozygous, because if I drew the Punnett square, D, 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 all of the offspring would all be the same, and they'd all be heterozygous, and they'd all be purple, because they all have one dominant allele. The offspring are heterozygous. State the meaning of heterozygous, and it's when the alleles are different, which means we have one dominant allele, which you can see, and one recessive allele. The photograph shows bacteria. Bacteria such as E. coli can be pathogens. State the meaning of the term pathogen. A pathogen is a harmful microorganism. We can't just say a microorganism, because we're looking at a harmful one. Describe two ways in which pathogens can spread from person to person. I've got direct contact, contaminated food, dirty water, etc. Bacterial infections may be treated by antibiotics. State the name of one antibiotic. We look at penicillin. Which one of the following results from the overuse of antibiotics? The bacteria become resistant to antibiotic. Mitosis and meiosis are two types of cell division. Diagrams A and B show the start and result of both types of cell division in a cell with 4 chromosomes. Use the diagrams and your own knowledge to describe the two types of cell division. You should state which diagram shows mitosis and which one shows meiosis. Describe what you can see at the start and the result for each type, and give one function. So I've written it as a table. Okay, obviously you're judged on your quality of written writing. But so A is mitosis. Okay, we have 2 daughter cells at the end, and we know that mitosis delivers 2 daughter cells, that they are genetically identical. We can't say identical, they're genetically identical. We need it for growth and repair, and that they have the same number of chromosomes as the original cell. B is meiosis, so we get a mark for that. It has 4 daughter cells, which we can see. They are genetically different. They produce gametes, and if you can't remember, gametes are our sex cells, and they contain half the number of chromosomes. We've got 2 here where we can see 4 at the beginning. Read the following article about diabetes. In type 1 diabetes, the cells from the pancreas that make insulin are destroyed by cells of the immune system. You're more likely to develop it if diabetes runs in your family. The immune system may be triggered to act on the pancreas by a virus, pollutants or stress causing type 1 diabetes. In type 2 diabetes, not enough insulin is produced, or cells in the liver fail to respond to the insulin that is produced. It is more likely to occur if it runs in your family, but there's also several risk factors. They include lifestyle choices, ethnic origins, and your age. Despite a rapid rise in the incidence of diabetes, there's been 28% fall in the number of deaths from diabetes-related conditions in Wales between 2019 and 2013. This shows that there's been some success in how diabetes has been managed, but early diagnosis is vital. A spokesperson for a charity promoting diabetes awareness in Wales said, types of diabetes can be prevented, but there's no way of preventing type 1. Looking after your own health can reduce the risk. Use the above information and your own knowledge to answer the following questions. Give reasons why people at high risk of developing diabetes should be tested, and it's to prevent the development of diabetes. Does the evidence given in the article support the claim made in line 18 that type 2 diabetes can be prevented? And the answer is no, and because it states in the question, and it says, is that, where is it? That more likely because it runs in the family. So you could have the healthiest lifestyle, but if it runs in your family, you have more chance of developing it. Explain one way in which looking after your own health can reduce the risk of developing diabetes. So we've got reduce a diet high in sugar, and you could regular exercise to prevent obesity, which can cause type 2 diabetes. Explain what would happen to the body if the cells in the liver fail to respond to the insulin that is produced. Well, the glucose will not be converted, for a mark. You get a second mark saying it's into glycogen, and then a third mark saying so it's going to remain high in the body. The photograph shows the banded snail. Scientists investigated variation in the mass of individual snails sampled at random from 2 different sites, A and B. The mass of each snail was recorded to the nearest 0.1 grams. The results are shown in the bar chart, so the number of snails and the mass of the snails. The table below shows the mean mass of snails collected at each site. Calculate the percentage increase for the mean mass of the snails at site B compared to site A. So we've got the difference. I did 16.8, take away 12.3 to get 4.5, because that's the difference. Divide it by the site A, because we're comparing it to site A, and then times 100 to get a percentage. So I've got 36.59. At which of the 2 sites do the snails show greater variation in mass? Give the reason for your choice. Site A, which we can see here, we've got a greater spread of mass. They're over, essentially starting at 10 grams to 15 grams. How did the scientists reduce bias in their investigation? They sampled at random. Why is it important that other scientists carry out the same investigation as these scientists? Because they want to check the reproducibility. Use your knowledge of natural selection to explain the long-term advantage of genetic variation in the changing environment. Is that they have an adaptation which gives them the advantage to survive, and they're then able to reproduce and pass on advantageous alleles to their offspring.